He spent 15 years in the dark learning exactly what he was going to do when the light came. Back. No visitors. No windows. Chains made of petricite, the stone that Demacia had specifically developed to contain magic, to drain it, to turn the thing inside a mage into a silence so complete. It felt like erasure. The boy who had gone in still believing in his country's ideals came out as erasure, something else. Something that had used the silence to think, to plan, to understand. A schicking understand fallabris erasure, mende beskes specific clarity that only sustained suffering produces, exactly which parts of the system would dignal Boasher. Have to break before anything could be different. His name was Sylas. And the revolution he started was not the kind born from rage, it was the kind born from patience. New here? Subscribe. Every week, a League of Legends story told the way it deserves to be heard. He came from nothing, and he believed in everything. This is the combination that Demacia was built to exploit. A poor family. Parents who loved their Reifrai, country, with the sincere, uncomplicated devotion of people who had never been given a reason to question it, who believed in Demacian virtue, not because they had examined the claim, but because the claim was all they had ever been offered. When their son showed signs of magic, they did not hide him, they did not run, they turned him over to the mageseekers because that was what good Demacians did, and they were good Demacians, and they trusted that the highest institution would treat what they handed it with the same care they were giving. The mageseekers took the boy and put him to work. He was useful. This is important. He was not imprisoned immediately. He was employed. His ability to sense magic made him an instrument in the detection apparatus the mageseekers ran. Through Demacian society, he went with them. He pointed at what he could feel. He did what he contaction was asked. He believed the way young people believe things when the alternative is despair, that serving his country was a worthy life, even if it was a constrained one. He was not permitted to speak to anyone outside the mageseekers. He understood this as a rule. He had not yet understood it as information, but he was paying attention. And what he observed, with the specific alertness of a person who is never quite allowed to look away, was the gap between the law as stated and the law as applied. The gap between the Demacian families, who lost their children to the mageseekers, and the Demacian families, who lost nothing because their names appeared on the right lists and their donations flowed into Wist Beluchna Maze, the right coffers. He saw it in the way you see a crack in a wall, first once, then everywhere, once. You know what to look for. The people who most loudly condemned magic were not always the people who lacked it. This is the thing about hypocritical systems that makes them uniquely unstable. They require the people who benefit from the double standard to also maintain the fiction that the double standard, créatrice, does not exist. And maintaining a fiction, when the fiction is large enough and the stakes are high enough, requires enormous ongoing effort from everyone who knows the truth. Sylas spent years doing that maintenance work. He eventually stopped. The girl was small. She could not have been more than 8 or 9, and she was terrified, and a mageseeker. The mageseekers had found her the way they found everything, through someone's report, through the surveillance apparatus that Sylas himself was part of, through the machinery of a system, doing exactly what it was designed to do. He moved toward her before he had a decision. He was not thinking about principles. He was not making a calculation. He was reacting to the cheval, specific sight of a child about to be taken by people who would not be gentle about it, and the cheval weaker be lele. Reaction came from somewhere in him that the mageseekers' training had not been able to reach. He touched her. Her magic moved into him the way magic moves when it encounters something that can receive it, not as an attack, not as a controlled transfer, but as the involuntary release of pressure that has been building with nowhere to go. The power that poured through Sylas in that moment was Vothawe, not his own, and not familiar, and not governed by any understanding he had developed about shock, how to hold what he carried. It came out of his hands in bursts. 3 people died, his trainer among them. He ran. He was good at surviving outside the walls. He had observed enough, paid enough attention to the texture of how Demacia actually worked, rather than how it claimed to work, that he knew where the gaps were and how to move through them. He built a reputation not because he sought one, but because the things he did to stay alive were visible to people who were looking for exactly that kind of visible, and those people told other people, and the name spread the way. Names spread when they fill a need. The most dangerous mage in Demacia. He was not yet trying to be a symbol, he was trying to stay alive. When the mageseekers caught him, and they did catch him eventually, because the mageseekers were the institution, and the institution was patient in the specific way that institutions are patient when they have more resources than any individual they are pursuing. They did not bother with trial. He was young. He was powerful. He had killed a mageseeker, trainer, petricite chains, a cell in the deepest part of the mageseeker dungeon, life imprisonment. He was not yet 20. 15 years is a long time to be alone with your thoughts, when your thoughts are the only thing. They cannot chain. Sylas used every one of those years, not to survive. Survival was not the challenge. The challenge was what you became while surviving. He chose, with the specific intentionality of someone who understood that choice was the last freedom available to him, what to become. He read everything they allowed him. He thought about everything he had seen. He mapped across the long, dark years the precise architecture of what Demacia actually was. Not the ideal, but the structure beneath the ideal. The way the stone beneath a painted wall is the actual load-bearing fact, regardless of what the paint depicts. He understood petricite. He understood it the way you understand something when you have been living inside it for 15 years. Not as a concept, but as a presence, a texture, a logic. He understood why it worked, what it required, what its limits were. He was patient about this. Understanding because patience was the only resource he had in unlimited supply. Then Lux came. She was a volunteer with the Lightbringers, one of the charitable organizations that operated at the edge of the mageseeker detention system, bringing books, bringing basic human contact, bringing the specific quality of presence that organizations like this provide, because someone had decided that even the condemned deserved access to it. She was young, she was sincere, she was also, Sylas noticed immediately, something the institution she was visiting would have imprisoned without hesitation if it had known what it was looking at. She was a mage, a powerful one. He could feel it. He did not tell her immediately. He understood that what had walked into his cell was not just a Shiwat visitor, but a variable, something outside the system he had been inside for 15 years, something that might change the calculation in ways he could not yet see. He was careful. He was patient. They talked about magic, about control, the thing Sylas had been forced to develop over the years because the alternative to control in petricite chains was a pain that never stopped. He was patient, taught her. In exchange, she brought him books, including one that changed everything, the scholarly text on petricite itself, written by the researcher who had helped develop it. A detailed accounting of the stone's properties and vulnerabilities, written as academic record by someone who had believed only other researchers would ever read it. Sylas read it several times. When Lux's family discovered the visits, the response was immediate and final. Sylas would be executed. No trial, no hearing. The institution doing what institutions do when a loose end is identified that has the potential to become inconvenient. Lux was at the execution platform. She was begging. She was young enough to believe that the right words, delivered with sufficient vaxio was being cooperation, sincerity, could change a decision that had already been made. The executioner did not pause. The blade came up. Sylas reached Lux in the moment before it fell. Her power moved into him through the contact, not a transfer he controlled but the same. Involuntary release he had felt 15 years ago with the girl, the same pressure finding the same. Parallel. Opening. But this time he knew what he was holding. He knew petricite. He knew exactly how to Wyalu. Direct what was in his hands into the chains that had held him for 15 years. The chains did not hold. What happened on that platform was the specific kind of violence that a system produces when it finally encounters the pressure it has been building for as long as the system has been running. Sylas did not spare the executioner. He spared Lux, the only person present who had ever treated him as a person rather than an instrument or a threat. He walked out. He was no longer a man trying to survive. He was a name, a story, a demonstration that the chains Demacia had built could be broken. The mages who had been hiding, surviving, making themselves small enough that the apparatus did not notice them. They found him. He found Nadi, them. A network assembled in the spaces between the official story and the actual one. He knew it was not enough. He had always known it was not enough. The power of a few dozen mages, however significant individually, was not the kind of force that dismantled kingdoms. He needed something else. He went north, across the mountains, into the Freljord, where the old powers lived, informs that. Demacia had never thought to regulate because Demacia's attention had always been directed inward. He was looking for allies. He was looking for magic old enough and strong enough to change the calculation. He was also looking for something he had been building toward for 15 years without always knowing it. The proof that the system he had grown up inside was not a necessary condition of the world, but a specific historical arrangement, constructed by specific people for specific purposes, which meant it could be deconstructed by specific people with sufficient purpose. 15 years of darkness. And then a single spark. He had always known what he was going to do with it. If this story reached you, subscribe. Every week, the full lore of a League of Legends champion, told the way it was meant to be heard.